Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Our Mind on Music. This week, episode 81, I'm speaking with Larry Hobdell, who is the executive director of ACAMIS, which is the Association for China and Mongolia International Schools. Now, ACAMIS is an organization that's been around since 2000 and offers a lot of different opportunities for international schools, including sports, drama, and music. A few weeks ago, I was lucky enough to attend the ACAMIS Conference for the Arts, which was a conference in Tianjin, China, hosted by the International School of Tianjin. That is also when I had the opportunity to visit the Tianjin Juilliard School, where I met Rob Ross. Some of you might have seen that I chatted with Rob on here as well about that school and about the offerings for music students and music educators here in China. Today, Larry and I are going to be talking about the original format of ACAMIS. They started out as an organization that was intended to allow international schools to interact through sport. Over time, arts became a part of what ACAMIS offers. I'm really happy to see how this is going currently. I was happy to present about the big gig at the ACAMIS conference in Tianjin. Some of you might have seen my episodes chatting with Chris Kulma, Anna Gower, and others that are related to the big gig professional development for music educators. In the next academic year, I will be working at Xiamen International School, also here in Shenzhen, and we will be hosting the ACAMIS Conference for the Arts. I'm really looking forward to that. All right. Let's get into my chat with Larry, who shares a lot more insight than I'm able to. I hope you enjoy our discussion about the Association for China and Mongolia International Schools. Here's Larry Hobdell, Executive Director.
You're at Xiamen International School?
That's right. Until the end of this academic year, and the next year I'm at Swiss, at Shenhua.
At Swiss. You're going over with my man Daniel, huh?
That's right. That's what I was saying when we chatted just briefly as I was leaving the conference. I was saying I'll see you at next year's event because we're hosting next year.
I'll be darned. Yeah, that is very convenient. At that art event at the social, that was the sweetest jam session I have ever been a part of.
Wow, holy, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was, I guess it was spontaneous, right? It just sort of, I looked up and there you guys were. It was cool.
It's Madeleine had planned a little bit. She said, okay, we're going to do a jam. She brought some Irish, like we played together in an Irish Celtic band. So we said, okay, we'll bring some music along and we'll just kind of jam and see who joins in. So a number of the people that were there, like Ariel, he jumped in on the piano, but he actually plays the is it called Barain, the Celtic drum.
Barong, barong.
So yeah, it wasn't totally spontaneous, but of course what happens with things like that, suddenly somebody says, hey, we want to dance. So we start playing some Santana and see where it goes from there.
The guy, Ariel, that guy could play a piano. I'm telling you what, I mean, all you guys are great, but the piano guy, woo!
He's amazing, yeah. He plays all over town here. He's kind of like, I guess he's become a bit of a Shenzhen fixture. You walk into a jazz club and there he is. And then you walk into a club that has pop covers going and there he is.
Are you associated with Addie Loy at all? She's a musician, head of school at Nanshan International School in Shenzhen. You know her?
No, I don't.
She is a big time proponent of music and plays the guitar and sings. So you know, hook up with her at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the great things about living in this area, actually, because we're in Shenzhen, but of course we're an hour away from Hong Kong and we're an hour away from Guangzhou. We've got Macau just there. So the amount of schools that we can collaborate with, and then from my perspective, as a music teacher, but also as a musician, the people that I can collaborate with, it's amazing.
I'm going to do something also, Jeremy, while I'm thinking about it with ACE to get more musical opportunities for kids in the Shenzhen region, especially for the smaller schools who may not have an orchestra or a jazz band or whatever to be able to mix in with other musical venues that where other older, bigger schools, I should say, have these things. So, Caleb Doyle is the Southern Regional Representative for ACE. Do you know Caleb at all?
I do, and we'll be colleagues next year. He works at
Yeah,
Swiss.
absolutely. And that's the kind of thing I'm urging him to do by promoting more regional, so the kids don't have to travel too far in China. It's just right here in Shenzhen. Lots of schools, lots of talents.
I love that. And I just finished off my assignment doing adjudication for the AMI Jazz Festival that's coming up. So we got the
Mhm.
auditions in, and I was helping out with that. And I was thinking next year, one of the things that I'll be doing at Swiss is taking over the jazz program there.
Okay.
And I think that's a great opportunity. Jazz, the breadth of jazz, of course, it's we use one word, but it means a whole world. So you could do the big band thing, which happens at the band festivals already, but we
Yeah,
could do smaller stuff, like more like bebop style and stuff like that. So I'd love to
absolutely.
find out ways to expand that.
Excellent. I'm going to put him in touch with you so you guys can start talking about next year if there's an opportunity. I'd love to see it happen with folks like yourselves who are really passionate about music.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic.
All
So
right. So how can I help you here today? What do you want to talk about?
ACAMIS was founded in 1999, actually, and the first event was at WAB, the Western Academy of Beijing, in 2000. The idea was to do sports.
Just time to give you our play of the day, which comes all the way from China, more specifically from Beijing, where an elementary middle school girls game produced an amazing shot. We'll set it up for you. The team with the black uniform is 3 points back with time expiring, and then... Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
A couple weeks later, there was the Xiamen International School. There was the first annual general meeting.
Yeah, the AGM, annual general meeting of just really a small number of schools at that point, 6 or 7 schools. Yeah.
And 7 schools were there, played some sports, and said, "This is cool. Maybe we should keep this going."
Yeah, yeah. That was really the intent to have schools engage with one another through sports, and what better way to do it than to have some competitions,
Mhm.
informal competitions, nothing real formal, but it gave students, I imagine, an opportunity not just to play sports, but as sports does, it gave kids opportunities to meet other students, to see other players, to look at other talents, those kinds of things. And that was kind of the genesis of it. That there was really no formal organization of quote ACAMIS until Jim Kirshen took over as its first executive director in 2010. So for almost 10 years, it was sort of an informal kind of organization driven by these, I think, 7 heads. In fact, I recently talked to Ann Fowles, one of the founding directors of ACAMIS, and she had some really fond memories. She's working with an accreditation agency. I saw her at the Spring Leadership Conference, and she really looked back and that with a lot of pride, in that she and her colleagues really were the inspiration for ACAMIS. to give kids these opportunities. And of course, it evolved beyond sports. It evolved with these cultural kinds of activities, non-sports, because as we know, not all kids, not all students are inclined toward sports. And that was the growth of the ACE program as we know it today. And again, it was much more informal than it is today, with three regional reps. With I just mentioned Caleb Doyle's name in the southern region, Anna Ewan handles the central region, and Alex Rambaud, Rambaud, a great guy who's from Xi'an, Lianjitan International School, the very site of our Spring Leadership Conference, a great guy. And these three folks really do an organized job of encouraging other schools to become involved, whether it's in digital competitions or in person. So the ACAMIS has come a long ways just from these 7 or so schools kind of engaging informally, doing some athletic kinds of things first, non-athletic things, and then formally organizing themselves into an organization whereby they appointed their first executive director, and Jim Kirshen, who unfortunately only lasted just 3 years before he passed away in 2013. And hence we have an award, a memorial award named after him. It's essentially a service learning grant. And that was, again, one of the other informal activities that were occurring during those early days and have since become more formalized. As you might have seen, we awarded, my goodness, 10 service learning grants to schools that applied, of the 29 schools, which is terrific. And of course, there were 5 Jim Kirshen applications, all driven by commitment to service to the school and or the community. And there were 2 awards given. So it has evolved. And I feel pretty good that I feel honored, I guess, to say that I'm just the third executive director of ACAMIS to try to push this idea of giving students many more opportunities to engage with one another, whether it's music or it's art or it's the math Olympiad or it's MU. All kids have talents, and we just have to unlock it and give them those opportunities.
Yes, and I think also kind of back to what you said about the sports. Not every student is driven towards sports. So in the case of sports and music and whatever it is that they choose to do, one of the things that I love about ACAMIS is that it offers this opportunity to do something outside of your school, outside of your usual peer group. This year, Shenhua International School hosted the art festival. So we had a music, art, drama festival at Swiss. And, for some of the students that participated from our school, middle school, even elementary school students that were able to come along, it was a huge weekend for them. It was so exciting. And to sit down with band and strings and everything for the last piece, it was massive. I played guitar on one of the songs and I could feel the strength of it, as an adult who's played on lots of stages.
Sure.
So it feels, I think, a really important, I'll say, hole in the whole system that ACAMIS fills, because if you get the AMI students or the APAC students, for both of those, you have to audition for that in the middle school and high school. It's a high level of playing, which is great. I love that exists. And, the festival that we did, it had some fantastic players. Some of those kids participated in AMI or APAC, but also we had some of the elementary school and lower middle school kids who just had never had an opportunity to do that. And man, those kids lit up when they were sitting there, getting ready to go to it. And then when they were on stage and when the parents were clapping at the end, fantastic. It was just amazing to be a part of.
One of my missions this first year is to visit as many international school member schools as I can, to become familiar with the school's ethos and what their passions are. And I visited Daniel's school about a month and a half ago, and he was talking about this very event. He's a little bit nervous about some of the outside kinds of things, but he was very excited about it, as he should have been. How many schools participated in that particular event? Quite a few, or
I would say maybe 7 or 8, something like that. It was really fantastic.
like I was talking about, Jeremy, with sports, it does so much more for children when they engage with one another. They not only learn the value of music, but they see other players, how they approach their craft, what level of commitment is required to up their game, and how their talents have evolved. So that for the little kids, as you mentioned, whose eyes lit up, it was a perfect scenario for them to see older students model what really is a culmination of their practice, commitment, and an ability to harmonize and to work together as a team, just like a soccer team. An orchestra or a band has to work together in perfect harmony. So I'm happy to hear you say that event went well, because I didn't have a chance to talk with Daniel about it as a follow-up. But great.
Yeah, I was really proud to be a part of that. I mean, uh, one of again, the thing that I loved, I think most possibly was the range of ages and watching how some of those older students really mentored the younger ones because they had done stuff like this before. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the things we talk about a lot at these music festivals, like we did at this one, is sports are great, and I'm definitely not taking away. You're not going to get a guy from Canada talking bad about hockey. So, but but so not to take away from sports, but one of the things that's nice is I understand friendly competition, and these ones, there's no competition at all. It's not, I mean, maybe competing, like Rob Ross said in our interview, in our chat the other day, he said, if you're competing with yourself. How well did I play yesterday? And that type of thing. I love the fact that, these kids who maybe are not used to going to another school to begin with, and then to meet with students from 6 or 7 other schools and sit down beside them. They're sharing the stand, and they're meeting kids, and they're feeling comfortable, and they're walking away like, I have new friends because we met through playing this instrument. Those are the things that I love. And then watching these older ones understand that they are the older ones and mentoring the younger ones. It's just amazing to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, and they learn from each other about who they are, not just as musicians, but who they are as people, where they've come from, where does their inspiration come from. So it's a really terrific experience for children. And another thing I wanted to add, Jeremy, which I think adds another element of richness to these kinds of events, is adults who model playing like yourself, that you are getting a thrill out of kind of playing with these guys. But I'm sure lots of eyes and ears were on you, and I think that's important for adults. This is not a revelation, but I once had an art teacher at ISF in Florence, where I was a director of the school there, who was reluctant to model her craft.
Mm.
As good an artist as she was, I visited her classroom 4, 5, 6 times, and never once did I see her drawing up there. I said, Darlene, kids want to see you. They want to see your passion and how you handle yourself as an artist. And so she began to do that. And I think it to some degree changed how she taught, and it changed her a little bit and how she engaged. So good for you. I imagine the kids were thinking the same thing. My goodness, there truly is another side to this individual, and it helps with the engagement. Engagement is at the very core of what we do as teachers. And I say we because I was a former teacher for 8 years, English teacher, before moving into the principalship. Sometimes folks look at us leaders as, oh, did you ever really? Of course, that there are deep roots. That's where we come from. That's where we learned our craft, so that we're able to assist, like you're doing, helping other children learn and grow as musicians.
Absolutely. I understood from the arts conference last year in Suzhou, that was the first ever arts conference for ACAMIS. What was the process? How did it take so long for the conference to happen? I mean, and what sort of prompted it to be now?
Yeah, I truly, Jeremy, wish I knew the answer to that. I speculate because ACAMIS had dedicated its time and energies to 5 other annual conferences where time was at a premium, where you have 2 conferences in the fall and 3 conferences in the spring, including this enormous event, the Spring Leadership. Took a lot of time. And I suspect that the inspiration may have come from the musicians of the international world, such as folks like Caleb Doyle and others who said, hey, let's give arts a front and center place, because increasing numbers of musical related events are being planned for ACE next year, and they were this past year, but more opportunities need to have been given. So anyway, the first ever was last year, and it was decently attended. And we don't measure conferences necessarily by their attendance, but it was a good start. And then this year, it was one of the most positive vibes I've derived from a conference, even while it was the smallest attended. It had such an energy about it. And I was telling the board members a couple of weeks ago, all right, we didn't get the attendance we wanted, but the energy and the passion that educators derived from that conference was just off the charts. And as I looked at it a little further, and as I talked with the EARCOS director, Ed Green, who I know pretty well, I used to serve on the board there, I looked at their teachers conference, and they do a rotation of disciplines every March within their teacher conference. And one of the strands this year was art. So a lot of people who otherwise would have attended this conference attended the EARCOS teachers conference that included art. So, and that won't be the same for probably another 5 years. So I'm looking forward to an even stronger attended conference for next year.
I'll say last year's conference, I actually didn't present. I wasn't one of the presenters last year. And part of that, I have to say, honestly, was my nerves. I thought, I don't know if I'm ready to do this, And then I saw it last year, and I loved what I saw, and I thought, no, I want to be a part of this. It's just too good an opportunity. I presented on What is the Big Gig, which is a professional development format by Musical Futures in cooperation with the Music Teachers in International Schools group. So I presented on that this year, and I just thought, I'm so happy that I did that. I loved the experience, and it just felt like such a great thing to be a part of. Next year, I'll be able to be a part of hosting. So for me, it's sort of worked really well step by step to get into this
Yeah, yeah, and I can see sometimes the reticence of folks to present, but it's like anything else. You know, you get in front of your classroom, and once you get underway, the nerves go away because you know what you're talking about. You have this energy about you that you want to share with others, and that's what happens with presenters because, as you know, the presenters are the heart of our conference. You know, if we don't have good presentations, the quality is not going to be anywhere near what we want. So we always encourage presenters, and that's what I'll encourage you and your colleagues to do as we begin to promote next year's conference is to reach out, do some personal reach outs, not
Mm.
just the email blast, but you guys have plenty of connections throughout the international world to say, not just attend the arts conference, but let's give some thought to presenting
Yeah,
given whatever the theme might be.
I totally agree.
I'll be on your side of the world in a few weeks again. I'll be back for the Chinese conference. It's our last conference, and going to be held in Qingdao. So I'll see another part of China I haven't seen before.
Nice. You're going to Qingdao International School of Shandong, right?
Number one.
Number one. Yeah, that was my first school in China in 2002.
Good city, huh? Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, it was, but even back then, and it's developed since then.
其实内心一直很脆弱，只有在深夜时偷偷地把泪抹，不让谁看到背后的我。在无人的角落，只有黑暗和寂寞，没有月光，也没有快乐。
Larry, you've mentioned a couple of times through this conversation, in the context of the conversation, some of the previous jobs that you did before this current post. So I'm going to mention some of them. I'm going to read them off here because I copied them down. There's a reason I'm asking you this, but I'm going to give a little intro so people who are watching will know what I'm talking about. Did you start out as a teacher and move to elementary school principal? Was that how it worked?
Teacher first. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You were a teacher, a coach, elementary school principal. You were a high school principal in Wilmington.
Wilmington, Delaware. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you became school district superintendent.
Three different districts, Jeremy. One for 3 and the other 2 for 6.
And that's not the end of the list. It's regional education officer for the U.S. Department of State.
Mm-hmm.
Oy vey, you've been busy. You've been a busy man.
You know, like we never know where our careers are going to take us. If you had asked me when I was a 5th grade teacher back in the day, would I be the executive director? Come on.
Yeah.
You just can't predict it. And the same was true for the regional education officer for the Department of State. I had no idea that the Office of Overseas Schools even existed. You know, when I became a director of the International School of Florence, our regional education officer would visit me about once every year and a half, and she would talk to me about how the embassy and consulate children are doing, and we'd have these nice conversations. About the 4th year, she said, "Larry, I'm not sure what you're doing after this." I said, "Well, our daughter is coming back to the U.S." She said, "Well, there's an opening in the Office of Overseas Schools. You really ought to consider it." And I went down there to talk with the director. And my goodness, it was not really an interview. It was just a conversation about when I could start. So it was a beautiful opportunity for me that allowed me to become so familiar with China and Asia, because that happened to be my territory.
Okay.
And then after that, of course, you know, the REO, and then this position became available.
Mhm.
Again, I didn't have a lot of understanding about ACAMIS until I did a little bit of research. And of course, I had a nice almost year-long transition with Tom Olmert to become more acquainted with the responsibilities of the position. Yeah, the career took a lot of twists and turns.
I mean, you have sort of answered part of my question related to why I even brought this up. Um, but it's kind of like how, I mean, our whole life experience prepares us for everything we do. You know, I thought when I was in middle school I was going to be the next Eddie Van Halen, and I did I think I'd be teaching jazz in Shenzhen, China? I did not. No. Um, so you never know where it's going to take you. I totally agree with that point. But basically, I'm thinking if you could try to hone in on one main thing that you think you can distill from that experience that really helps to inform what you do today.
I think at the root of my soul is engagement with people. And that's of course the essence of teaching. So that's a natural for me to want to engage with people. When I visit school directors to meet them and to become familiar with, the first thing that what can I prepare? And I say absolutely nothing. We're just going to sit and have an informal conversation. So this idea of engagement is important to me, and this level of curiosity that I have about how things work, how things can be better. And that's what sort of prompted me to move from position to position. Sometimes as teachers, we saw administrators who were perfect models for me, and other times I thought, I can do a lot better than that. So that's what inspired me at times to move up to these kinds of positions. And then the idea of challenge, taking on new responsibilities that I hadn't done before. For instance, I was an elementary-based teacher who wanted to coach, but because the schedules at the high school and elementary were different, I had to gain certification in secondary English, which I did in a year and a half, which allowed me to become an English teacher at the high school level and allowed me to coach. So that took me to the high school. High school took me to the principalship, and of course, I wanted to try to have more influence over my thinking with the superintendency, and that's what led me to that.
Mhm.
And I guess too, at the heart of what I do is try to shape the experiences that people will have to become better at what they do. Hence, the professional development arena, which had always been important to me. I saw this as an attractive feature of this new position, although I had never done this before.
Mhm.
I'd never done this. I'd never constructed a conference, but attended lots of conferences. I understood what good teaching is, what good professional does, but I never did this. So I saw it as another challenge. And I have good people around me. I had a good transition. So I'm making my way through this first year, and I think in a good way because of the people that I have around me.
Having great people around you is huge. It's a major thing, but also there's the part of allowing yourself to be a collaborative leader, listening to what people say, because Steve Jobs, it's a cliche now, but I hire people who know what they're going to do, and then I let them do it. You know, I mean, I'm misquoting it, but that's the general idea. So if you have great people around you and you don't listen to them, then it doesn't matter. But if you're confident enough and you're enough of a listener, a people person, then it allows it to be a much stronger thing than it could have been.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you, for instance, I didn't frankly have a lot of confidence in one of my team members this year because I didn't know him well enough. But my goodness, when we began to develop our new website, which is going to be rolled out this summer, that was a really collaborative process involving two or three, four people, us talking looking at different kinds of ways where we could message appropriately. And I began to see another side of this individual that really impressed me. And he made a presentation to our board about 2 weeks ago about this new website, handled himself beautifully, knew all the technical components, of course, but he was able to relate to the board about the rationale behind the changes. And it just gave me a whole new appreciation for him. And it just taught me another lesson. All right, don't doubt, just give people an opportunity and their talents will shine through.
Nice. I think that's probably the teacher in you coming out, whether or not you realize it or not, because that's a big part of what we do. We watch and we see what support we need, but we also give kids a little room to figure out what they need as well. So
Exactly.
I think if we can transfer a lot of the approaches that we have in the classroom to just life in general, not
Mm,
necessarily with kids, I think
exactly.
it's a real strength, actually. So I'll pick up on one of the words that you said just now because it's one of the main things I wanted to ask about. And I'm curious, what would you say were the main challenges that you guys had to, as ACAMIS, had to overcome with bringing the conference about?
You're talking about the arts conference?
I am.
Yeah, the ACE and the arts conference are really separate and distinct to a large extent because ACE promotes a lot of different activities that brings children together. Like I mentioned, the Math Olympiad, MUN, a digital arts competition, filmmaking. So a lot of different kinds of activities for children. So it's not all centered on art.
Okay.
The individual who um, is our regional ACE coordinator, is also very deeply passionate, as you probably already know, Caleb Doyle, about art. In fact, he served on the arts conference committee, and he was one of the drivers for that conference. And that's I think why it went so well last year. And not that it didn't go well this year, but he was not necessarily an organized part of that. But one of the challenges was the competing interest among teachers, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, where a lot of schools opted to send their teachers to the EARCOS Teachers Conference. That was just one of our singular challenges, but I don't think we'll run into that next year. But when you have a good event and it's a positive event, people talk about it.
Hmm.
And that's my hope here with this past arts conference, that people will really share their experiences and their beliefs and encourage others to attend for next year.
Absolutely. I mean, I know we had quite a good number from Shenzhen at this year's conference in Tianjin. Um,
Mhm.
Going to Juilliard was amazing, and then of course the international school in Tianjin were just amazing hosts, and it's a great campus and all. The whole experience was great. So when I came back and I was telling the drama teachers here and the art teachers, I was like, I hate to say this, guys, but you missed out. It was awesome. It was just
I
a
mean,
great experience.
here I am, a non-music guy, and I'm at Juilliard listening to these three guys. One was on the oboe, one's on the violin, and help me with the third instrument. It was
Uh,
these three students. Uh,
oh, I'm trying to think
oh,
because there were the mallet guys, and then there was the cello, violin, piano,
cello. Cello.
cello. Okay.
And it nearly brought tears to my eyes to see and hear this beautiful music. And the same thing too when we listened to the children play at the Spring Leadership Conference at the opening
Hmm.
for these two children, these lead singers, these little people
Yep.
sing and have the confidence, and then the rest of them, followed in behind. So, that's what's beautiful about music. Everybody gets to enjoy it.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad you clarified that. I mean, I know it's the A in ACE is arts, and then There are other two letters, but I I honestly thought they were intertwined a lot more so than what you've just explained to me. So
See,
thank you.
we learn from each other, just as we all do every single day. All right.
That I mean, Tianjin, I'll just mention again, we talked around it a bit, but that was amazing. Like, I mean, I love the fact last year Rob was at the conference in Suzhou as well,
Yeah.
which was fantastic. Rob Ross, and this year going there and the fact that it was in Tianjin, then Juilliard was able to host a pre-conference. Um, I don't even know where to start with that question, but how do those partnerships come around? I mean, I was looking at the Peer Share, I think is the name of is that the correct name for the thing? It says 60 plus peer learning communities by Peer Share.
Peer
Spear.
sphere.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, Peer
The
Share.
virtual learning community. But I think, Jeremy, it was more the coincidental proximity
Mm,
of Juilliard to the International School of Tianjin, which made it a perfect opportunity for educators to join. But it also inspired me to think, well, why not let's do more of that. We don't necessarily have to go there, but we can bring educators from Tianjin Juilliard to Swiss next
mhm.
year to
Oh,
do
fantastic.
some presentations. Why not? We learn quite a bit from them. They're talented, world-class musicians, and if they brought a few presenters along with maybe some students, that would further enrich the conference. So, it layers on ideas that you have as you see different things. I didn't get to experience what you did that day. We were able to stay for about a half a day. So,
Mm.
but I just heard amazing things about the experience.
The youth concert that evening was just
Wow.
amazing. I mean, and again, they had faculty playing, they had younger students playing. It was just a celebration of youth, and it was incredible. That's really exciting, and it leads to I have two questions left for you.
Yep. Mhm.
One of them was about that because you mentioned Swiss hosting the arts conference next year, which I'm really looking forward to. Again, being part of that. Are you able to share any of what the future plans are for um, the arts conference, for ACE, in the arts side of things? Are there any future plans that you're able to share with us?
I can't speculate about the arts conference necessarily because I rely heavily on our arts planning committee. We were
Hmm.
talking about earlier, you give others the opportunity to be creative and to perform, and that's what we do with our planning committees. We have a planning committee for each one of our conferences, and they're comprised of people like yourself, talented folks who want to do the best they can for other educators. So we'll leave that to them, but we'll have some level of collaboration as we
Okay.
review the presentation proposals that come in. So we're looking for bigger and better in terms of more participants to enjoy this experience next year. That's that. And as far as the ACE is concerned, uh, my desire is for more opportunities regionally. We're going to take a more regional approach to give students and schools the opportunity to enjoy an event that whereby they don't have to travel 4 hours, they don't have to get on a plane, they don't have to take a train it can be all regional, where
Mhm.
schools can host, or they can send children to a venue where they can experience opportunities like you and I were talking about earlier, where they've never seen a full orchestra.
Mhm.
They don't have an understanding of what a jazz band is all about, what a large band is all about, to
Mhm.
get to play under the auspices of a really talented conductor or a student conductor.
Mhm.
So they're the kinds of things that's driving me to make ACE an opportunity for kids to to have more opportunities actually for next year with the arts and music.
That's fantastic. What I took from what you just said is that rather than thinking bigger as being expanding outwards, it's more like looking at more detail within the regions, which is really cool actually, because it really helps people then to focus on what that area needs, what the students of those schools need, rather than, the bigger you get, it's like being at a massive school. You have 5,000 kids in the school, then it's unfortunately a little more likely that you'll feel like a number. Whereas if you have, let's say 300 kids in a school or less, you feel like, no, if I don't show up, that makes a dent in the presence, for this school. One of the bass players, he said, I've never seen an orchestra. And I said, well, you just played in one. No. And I mean, I get a lot out of working with those conductors as well, just watching them, because whether or not they're a guest conductor brought in or they're a colleague that's conducting, which in this case it was people that, are my friends. And I was watching them conduct, maybe for the first time ever, because I don't go to their classes and I don't always get to go to their concerts. So I learned a lot from seeing that, from being a part of the experience. And then this student saying to me that he had never seen an orchestra before, having played in one. I thought, holy cow, what an amazing experience we're offering to these kids,
And then for students to see student conductors work. I've been a part of many schools where the driver is the student band director. Of course, is an adult in charge, but I often saw the talents evolve of leaders who were given opportunities to lead their band, whether it was in the room or out on the soccer field or the football field at halftime. I thought, wow, what a great experience, not just musically, but from a leadership perspective.
Larry, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for chatting with me. But before we sign off, I do very often ask, as we're finishing off our conversations, is there a question that you wish I had asked that I didn't ask, or something that you would have liked to talk about that we didn't talk about?
Where did my interest in music come from?
Okay.
I'm a sports guy through and through. I never had any exposure, whatever. I grew up in a family of five. Meager means dad was a bus driver, and so there wasn't a lot of money to throw around. But it was when my older brother took me to Broadway. We're about 2 hours from New York City, and he took me to my first play. It was an off-Broadway play. Still remember it. Butterflies Are Free. Nothing really spectacular about it, but when I walked into that theater and saw this beautiful, gorgeous venue with these lights and intricate architecture, I thought, this is for me. Just like when I walked into my first baseball stadium and saw this green that I'd never seen before. It was the same for me in the theater, that it inspired a lifelong love and appreciation of music. So that's where that came from. So anyway, I asked that question and I answered that question. So there you go.
Well, that's definitely the idea of that question. That last question is, Larry, thank you so much for chatting with me. Again, I said it sort of as a semi joke just now earlier that you accepted coming on without even knowing what the podcast is. And so thank you for that trust, actually. And I know how busy you are as well. So thank you for giving me some of your time.
Well, I accepted because you and I connected so well. We engaged with one another. And I also saw you in action. That was what sealed the deal for me. I want to talk more with this guy. So I was happy to do it. It was a pleasure for me to be on your podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate what you just said. I had such a great feeling from that conference. So I know I've already been spreading the word out, and I hope that viewers who are watching here, some of whom will be music educators, some of those in China, just want to get the word out what you guys are doing, because I think it's fantastic and I really appreciate it.
Excellent. And you tell anybody that's going to next year's art conference that my autographs are free. I'll give anybody an autograph that they want.
And they're going to have a fantastic host next year. So I'm not hosting. I'm helping to host as a newbie. But
Absolutely. Yeah. You're
All right.
going to be one of the stars of the show. Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure our paths will cross again, and for sure next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Good night.